Hello, class, and welcome to the Music 3 review. We got a fun look at Craig as he rushes to find his headphones.
Just in from work.
Yeah, just in from work. And as always, we're here to entertain you and enlighten you as to questions and concerns and all the fun stuff that goes along with being a student in Music 133. I personally am currently in Taiwan, where I'll be for the rest of the year. So I am jet lagged, and but quite enjoying the change. But it seems to me that Craig is still in New Jersey, and Robin is still in New York. So we're and it's a relatively easy change for me. It's just the opposite time of day. So for me, it's 9:30 in the morning.
So word to the wise, if you want to bother Professor Wilcox, give him a call at like 3 in the afternoon our time.
Yes.
3 in the morning over there. So.
And do I answer emails at 3 in the morning, Robin?
No, he likes to be called on his cell phone, actually.
My cell phone doesn't work anymore. I paid it off and turned it off so I could get it unlocked for over here. But
oh wow.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. But if you have my phone number, feel free to give it a try. You'll get a lovely lady saying that phone doesn't work anymore, but after she's done telling you that you can't talk to me on the phone anymore, she'll answer your theory questions.
That's true. We've trained her.
She's very talented. She knows all about leading tones and minor keys.
That's right.
And subtonics. That being said, I'm still a little jet lagged and will ramble on. I'm also one of this is also one of the few instances where I get to speak English, and rather than just listen to everybody else speak Mandarin. So I will have the motor mouth, and that way, for that reason, I might turn it over before we drift too far off the reservation. Who wants to start first? Or maybe we should say a little about Creative Project 1 and Creative Project 2, because they are issues. One thing I'd like to say first, in case you missed the email, and there was an issue with the rubric grading. It allowed us to add comments, but it did not allow you to see those comments. And once we identified the issue, since we had already started grading, it was really too late to fix that. It wouldn't let us switch. But from here on out, you should be able to see the full array of comments that we have for you. And oh wow, that's a pretty powerful sound. You should be able to see the full array of comments. Who is that? Who's the center?
I don't have a phone.
It's Craig.
There he is.
So look forward to...
It was the phone ringing on my end, right next to the microphone, sorry.
We'll look for the full breakdown in the future. That should be all settled. But if you have questions still about why specifically you lost points, you'll be able to, you can write your professor and ask. So I thought maybe we could go around and say a few words about where people what vexed people and what people should watch for generally on the next one.
Yeah, I was going to add that Professor Wilcox added an excellent post on Piazza outlining some of the most common things that we were finding that we were giving feedback on. So take a look at that, because chances are one of those things applies to you if you did end up losing points. Just a couple of things that come to mind. Not following directions definitely hurt people in my sections. Just like not transposing a single melody twice, but instead writing 2 melodies, for example, or some notational things like that. But I think the biggest place actually was in the analysis questions, which is the bulk of the points. And I found that people weren't quite being specific enough. There was actually a fair amount of detail and thoughtfulness, which is great, but often it wasn't connected to really super specific points in the melody, and like this note is doing this, or I chose this pitch for this reason, and this is how it fits into the larger scheme. So the more of that super specific information that you can give us, the better, generally speaking.
So in my sections, just to echo what everyone else had said, the biggest problems I had in my sections were with the transposition. So when I took off points for anything involving the written notes, it was either an incorrect transition or a transition not being done at all. In terms of the analyses, formatting is huge. We really don't want to open up a Word file and see, a page and a half of unbroken text without a single carriage break or paragraph. So organization was a big problem in a lot of the answers. It was and some of them, and the most egregious examples were sort of a stream of consciousness type thing. And you really want to make an effort to format things a little better. Some of the formats that work well are just listing out the questions, putting, numbers, this is the answer to number 1. Just do what you can to be clearer and a little more exact, because, that does matter. And if you take the time to organize your thoughts a little better, I suspect that you'll do a better job answering the questions as well.
Fully
and
agree.
one of the issues that I saw several people do is they used a notation program to play the audio sample back. And one thing we want is to see you performing it. Now, we don't care if you use a keyboard and play on the keyboard, or use your computer and play with the keys on the keyboard to make actual sounds that you're producing. But when the computer plays it back, it sounds like a computer playing it back. It's absolutely even tempo. Every note is identical in its its decay and its what's called the envelope of the note. So it's very simple. It's very simple to see that you used a MIDI, and then you lose all the points for step 2. So just don't do it. It's not worth it. Just hack your way through it, make nasty sounds on the piano. That's what we want to see. That's what we want to hear. It's not worth losing points, but to get some, theoretically perfect performance. The other thing
I would just add to that. Sorry to interrupt, but
no, please.
To reinforce that it's totally fine to go like painfully slowly. Like we've had students who go like plink, 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 like note by note, one after another, and it's really fine. We're not looking for anything fancy. We just want you to actually play physically each note yourself. That's the point. We know many of you have no experience, and this is designed for you to be doable. So we know it's intimidating, but don't let that tempt you into.
Yes, we want to hear your plinks.
From the path.
Yes, we want your plinks.
We do.
Blink, blink. And the last thing is several of you sung, which is lovely, but accuracy of performance in your singing, unless you have a lot of experience, you can cause yourself quite a bit of trouble, because you get off and then you continue to stay off because you don't have something like a keyboard to bring you back on if you were off. So some of you just drift farther and farther off. And several of the examples, I had students who were singing notes and then having to sing a note that was an octave or an octave plus 3 above for the next pitch, and they might have sang 5 notes above instead of so just be conscious. If you do really want to sing, which is totally fine, realize that we're still having to grade you on performance accuracy, so you're giving yourself a challenge. But if you stick to steps mostly, and rather than leaps or large leaps, you'll find that you have an easier time to perform that melody with accuracy and less challenging. It takes a lot of skill, even for a trained musician, to sing an octave plus intervals. So just be careful that you don't give yourself too hard a time.
Mm-hmm.
So should we move on to CP2, or do you want to talk about?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's in many ways it's going to be a similar process, just with the newly added knowledge that you've all gained. Let me share my screen. I can just show the rubric for it. Somewhere. Where did it go?
Woohoo, excitement. We all love rubrics.
Yes, we do.
Show us your rubric, Robin.
This is our rubric. It's not just my rubric, it's our rubric. So again, it's the same stuff with submitting 2 files. Most of you did fine with that. Just be careful. Make sure it's all readable and listenable. And then, so again, you're creating a melody. Oh, there's two typos that we need to point out. One is it says compose and transpose a short melody. We're actually not asking you to transpose this time, so scratch that. We'll fix it in the next version. And then there was, what was the other one? Yes, beams. It says all beats and beams correctly match the chosen meter. Sadly, we are not able to offer beams in the actual tool, as you can see here. So
we're working on it. We're working on it.
You're excused from beams. You can ignore the beaming, which is lucky for you, because that's actually a tricky topic. But
we can ignore the beaming, but it's true that we still want to be able to see your beats clearly. So just because you're not using beams doesn't mean you can go off the reservation and throw together a bunch of crazy beat crap.
So actually,
I apologize for the use of the word crap.
Oh, it's okay. You're in a foreign country. They don't mind that kind of stuff over there.
Actually, they don't mind it in America. They mind it here.
Actually, that's very true. So I'm just going to make a brief example to show maybe what you wouldn't do in terms of showing your beats. So I'm in 3/4 time, and this would probably be unclear in terms of, whoops, if I'm going to put beats like this, if I'm going to put this rhythm, oops, keeps getting stuck. All right, this is not going to visually show the beat very well. So because we have these 2 notes as beat 1 and then these 3 notes as beat 2. So what I would do is just subtly, not too drastically, but kind of visually group the beats together, something a little more like that, just so it's clear that we understand. So it's clear to us that you understand kind of where the beats lie, and within reason, things should still fit. So, yeah.
Yeah. Remember that notes or durations are proportional on the staff. So, an 1/8 note should take up more space on the staff than a 16th note, and a quarter should take up the space of 2/8 notes, and a half note should take up the space of 2 quarter notes. So just make sure that you're showing the beats and everything's laid out relatively proportionally, so that we can see, as Robin says, that you understand where the beats are falling.
Another way to say that is to just focus on making sure the music looks the way it sounds. If the visual representation of music is dramatically different than how it sounds, in terms of the spacing, then something is probably amiss.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because I noticed a few people were doing that even in the first project where there was no rhythm. People were giving more space to long notes, and it obviously wasn't required to do that, but it was a nice touch when that was being done, because it kind of showed that you had a sense of what the rhythm was that you were trying to portray. So.
Well, I think poorly notated music, and this may just be me, is aesthetically unappealing. And I think it is to a lot of people. When you see things that aren't laid out properly, and you've looked at any kind of music at all in your life, it just doesn't look right. And so I think a lot of people do intuitively understand that you do need, that kind of spacing. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and then just going again through the rubric a bit more. You also remember that this assignment.
Robin, before we move on, I want to take a quick detour and look at one of the questions in the forum that we just got, because I think it's pertinent.
Great.
Let's see. I'll share.
Yeah, I need to be.
Here we have. Let me see if I can make that even bigger. Here we have a question from Sharon, and Sharon is wondering if the dotted quarter note she has in 3/4 time would be better notated as a quarter tied to an 1/8, so as to not obscure the beat. And this is an excellent question, and it's maybe something we need to clarify in the lessons over time. My instinct is that it's fine the way it is, but that's because I've played music for a long time. Does someone want to give a rationale for why what she's done is fine and probably the best way to do this?
I'm
or
happy
at
to.
least a perfectly acceptable way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean it's all about kind of practice over time and many centuries, in fact, of what musicians have found easy to read. And so you could argue it both ways, that it could be simpler to show all three beats, especially if you had beams on the eighth notes and have two eighth notes for the second and third beats. But I think maybe the rationale for this, which I think is very acceptable and fine, is that the combination of dotted quarter plus eighth note is very, very familiar to musicians. That when they see that combination, they know exactly what to do. And so simply by virtue of familiarity and commonness, it's very easy to read, and ultimately that's the important thing. So it does cross over the beat. The other thing is that there isn't really a rule in 3/4 time about keeping the center of the measure clear, because there is no center of the measure as there is.
Yeah, remember the 3/4 time is strong, weak, weak, strong, weak, weak. So
yeah.
Unlike 4/4 or 2/4, where you really want to see the middle of the bar so that you know where you are in the bar at all times. With 3/4, what's really critical is having that clear downbeat, so you know where the strong beat is. But I think I saw Craig drift to his library.
Yes.
So So now I think he's in his child's room. So I'm a little concerned what book he's pulling. Are you going to read us Goodnight Moon, or go the F to bed, or what do you got there?
No. Thankfully, my child's asleep, but I am in my office. But we just moved into this house about 4 years ago, and I never got around to removing the animal border up around the ceiling that was in by the previous owner. So I have a nice mix of study, office.
It's cute. It's cute.
So the book I was grabbing is this book called Behind Bars by Elaine Gould, and it is the definitive guide to music notation. I'm such a giant nerd that I've actually read this book front to back, and she goes into staggering depth about where you put dots and where you beam things. Have either of you guys ever enjoyed this particular tome? Oh yes. It's a must-have.
I seem to be the odd man out who does not want to be a staggering nerd, but that's fine. I'll probably have to dig it up now, because I feel my nerd credentials don't match up with the two of you, and I cannot stand.
I've only glanced in it. So I'm maybe somewhere in the middle between the two extremes here, but.
Well, I was actually grabbing it just in case I had to look up to see what she had said about dots and coordinates of 3/4. But if my memory serves, without going back and looking, her default rule is that the reason why that rhythm is preferable is because dotted notes that begin on a downbeat are always acceptable. But if it began not on a downbeat, you would revert to the tie. So again, I'm going from memory, but what I believe she would say was that rhythm is okay because the dotted quarter starts in a downbeat, making it easy to read. However, you generally want to avoid dotted notes and go to ties if it begins on an upbeat. That's probably more complicated than most of you wanted to hear.
Oh, that's interesting.
So let me share Sharon's picture again here. And thanks again, Sharon, for this excellent question. Sharon's got a lot of good questions generally. So if she had started, if she had a quarter note for the first beat and then had a dotted quarter, that would probably be less preferable. You'd want then a quarter and a quarter tied to an eighth and then an eighth. Is that what you're saying? But because she started on the downbeat. And see, now we're all learning. This is great. Start on the downbeat. You want.
Right, and she also would say, for example, that you would use in 4/4, you would use a dotted quarter on the downbeat of 1, but you would not use it on the downbeat of 2. But then she would say because beat 3 is a strong beat, you could use it on the downbeat of 3. And she also might say you would try to avoid a dotted note if you were beginning on, for instance, an eighth note after an eighth note rest. But a lot of these things are very highly situational. So whenever you have these books full of rules about music notation, you always have to take them as sort of defaults that should be adjusted and gone against when the situation requires. So think about more as guidelines and strict rules.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
If we keep on like this, we're going to drift too far into the obscure composer podcast.
Well, one more thing about that example. could I add one quick thing that might be pertinent to student potential confusion?
Sure.
That the example Sharon showed is dotted quarter and 3/8 notes, and actually, if we didn't know it was, if you hadn't told us that was 3/4, that pattern, dotted quarter and then 3/8 notes, is very typical of 6/8 and means something completely different. So I just want to mention that because we go on a lot about how in compound meters the dotted rhythm is one beat, and just visually alone that's a very typical rhythm for 6/8, but it's just it would mean something completely other. So just be aware of that. But we can move on. We can and should move on.
Yes, now that we've
Sharon got much more of an answer than she bargained for.
Yeah, and we've probably scared half the viewers to thinking they have no idea how to proceed from here. You're fine. Just keep at it. You'll do great. If you have a question, send it to us. You'll be fine. Yeah. But Sharon asked a very specific question, and we gave a very specific answer. But don't let that freak you out. Continue with your understanding and seek clarification from your teachers, who will be very happy to provide it, or give your melody a look, or post it on Piazza, and you'll find that someone will give you a comment very quickly.
Yes, indeed.
Let's move on with the rubric.
Yeah. So the other thing I was going to say earlier is this creative project fully encompasses both Unit 2 and Unit 3. So you really have to be pretty solid on all of that material in order to be successful here, and you have to be kind of thinking about two areas of knowledge at once. The whole area of rhythm and all of that, time signatures, and then also everything about scales and steps and flats and sharps and key signatures, even though you're not using a key signature, and all of that kind of stuff. So, and about that, I believe, let me double check this, that we don't want you to use a key signature. We want you to put in the, step 2 here. We want you to have a key signature in mind. Like if you were in E flat major, you'd have 3 flats, but instead of writing them at the beginning, you write them each time you need it. And a couple people have asked if accidentals hold through the measure, and I think we've said yes, because that is standard notation practice. So if you put a flat on the E at the beginning of the bar, actually Sharon's example, I think maybe that's why I'm thinking E flat. I think it was in E flat, and if she had an E flat later in the bar, it would still be flat if it's in the same octave. So just make sure all of that is really clear in your mind as you're doing this project.
Sharon had a G flat too.
Oh, a G flat. Oh, then I won't reveal what key that is, but it's
maybe E flat minor.
Perhaps could be not. Probably is. And then of course you're recording again, and this should be a very similar process as before. And
I must say, bravo. This is so much better than any time we've ever gotten recordings in the past. Everyone made an effort to, not to make the recording where their roommate is doing the dishes at the same time. Everyone did a really nice job.
Yeah.
Very clear. Super. We're very happy about that.
I would echo that. Yeah, it's very impressive. And then the analysis questions, again, just as much detail as you can. So it says, discuss how your choices of pitch relate to the emotional intent. Be specific. And then we don't really say how to be specific, so that's up to you. But what we mean is, like, this note leads to this note through an upward leap, and that means X. And then it goes to this next one, and that means X. So you can really get, like, super nerdy and detailed about it, and we like that. Maybe if you start to go on to like 3, 4, 5 pages, start to cut it back a little bit, but
yes, I think we'd like you to cut it back. But remember, in the rubric, to get the outstanding level, you need to support your assertions with direct evidence from the melody. So if if you make assertions, that's great. You'll probably get a good score. But to get that outstanding rating, which is the majority of the points you really need to support with your melody, because we want to see exactly where you made that decision and how that worked for you, not just that you made decisions that did this. We want to see where and how. In some ways, you can say less as long as you're very specific and let us know exactly what you're doing and what you're thinking, because a bunch of general around the world talking isn't so useful. But I know this is new, and everyone will get used to it. Do we have anything else to say on this before we push on? I don't want it to get too much longer before we dig into questions about Unit 3.
Yeah,
we should talk about the Common Core Concepts exam just briefly at the end.
Yeah.
So the other thing I'd like to add about the creative project is when you're submitting, just be careful. I had some people who submitting initially and then submitting alterations or revisions within the comments of Dropbox, and it can miss a file in that drop-down area of Dropbox. So just be careful that you're submitting it in the proper way and in a way that that we're going to be able to find.
Yep. Agreed. So should we do a quick run through of some of the homeworks?
Yeah, why don't we just push through some of the not all of them, but I think we should pay a special attention to the ones that relate to the core concept exam they're going to have to do in a week or two, because that will help them with that. And we do have another question, so before we push on, let's see. Exam question: Are we given the key signature circle for the exam, or do we need to memorize each one? Well, you're not really supposed to use any notes, and especially don't make a graphic on your computer and have it hiding there, because we see all of that and we have to report it, and it's a huge hassle for everyone, so don't do that. Well, no, you're supposed to come with a clean piece of paper, so my suggestion is to memorize it, put the paper down, and dump your brain onto the paper after the exam starts, and use that as a reference. However is easiest for you to memorize it, but that's part of the requirements for this. You're not allowed to use any notes, but you are allowed to use scratch paper, and which we highly encourage you to, dump your brain onto it, not literally. That's not something we want to watch on Proctor Track.
So what would be a good homework to jump in on?
Well, maybe Craig's. I'm going to bring up. Let's ask Craig.
We should definitely do 17, which is the scale degrees, minor scale types. That one I think gave people problems, as did relative and parallel keys, homework 20. Mm-hmm. That seemed like we got a bunch of questions on homework 17.
Yeah, that's right. So, do you want to talk about it?
Here, I can. Yeah, sure. Let me do a screen share here.
Okay. I can sort of start to talk through it until you get it ready.
Okay, so can you see it now?
Yep.
So the biggest problem that we seem to be having is people were confused about the subtonic and the leading tone. And these are the questions that I mostly got. And part of the confusion comes from the fact that we are talking about these different forms of minor, and these different forms of minor having then the different scale degrees, the different syllables. So if I just pick a couple of these down, let me go to the hard ones. Okay, so number 6 here, in A minor, what is this pitch's harmonic function? So the first step to finding harmonic function, and the first step is to find out the scale degree by counting up from the tonic. So I know we're A minor, so I'm going to find the A in my staff. If you can see the mouse, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I'm going to get to that being the 7th scale degree. And the 7th is one of the variable scale degrees when you're in a minor. And the thing to remember is that if it matches the key signature, if it is unaltered, then you're dealing with the subtonic. In this particular instance, it's been raised to create a half step between the 7th scale degree and the octave, which makes it the leading tone. The subtonic is what some people are going to think about as existing in natural minor, although that's really not the best way to think about it. The best way to think about it, I always find, is to think about the subtonic as being a whole tone beneath the tonic versus the leading tone being the semitone, that raised up note. Other than that, we do see some examples where we have the difference between la and lay. That isn't a great example because that's may. But if this were, for instance, an F natural in A minor, that would be lay. But if it were an F sharp, it would be la, the raised version having the higher solfege syllable. Let me see if there's something on the second page that's tricky also. Okay. So here we have the example where we have to make scales by adding flat and sharps. And the biggest mistake that people were making on this particular one was when they were counting half steps and whole steps, they were not taking into account a flat on the first note. So I answered a question for one student who had an A, I think it was an A flat minor scale, and they said, well, we have A to B to C to D to E to F to G or A. This is already an A flat minor scale without any sharps and flats, without taking into the fact that you have to start your half step and whole step count from A flat, meaning that to get the whole step, you would need to make this a B flat and then a C flat after that to get the half step in. So when you are looking at these examples, just make sure you're taking into account any accidental or lack thereof on the bottom note before you try and build these scales.
That's a great point.
Does anyone want to add anything to that?
I don't think so.
Yeah, let me just do one more of these real quick. So we have to create a C minor scale. I remember that minor is going to start with a whole step, followed by a half step. There's my D to E flat, whole step to F, whole step to G, and A flat, and then the B flat, which of course gives it 3 flats, which is the same key as its relative major of E flat major. Another slight problem is I had some people putting accentals behind, which makes perfect sense because you would say C, D, E flat, but just remember that when you write it on the staff, it's flat E, but when you say it out loud, you do say E flat, but on the staff, you always have to put the flat in front of the note. Okay, anything you want to add?
I was just going to say that it can be really useful to use the keyboard for this.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to do a quick screen share to show one of these. I don't know.
Let me turn off.
Maybe I'll do A flat minor. Yeah. Where is my? Okay. First, there's going to be a little view of Craig through my screen. Can you see the keyboard at the bottom here? Is that visible? Okay. So anyway, having a piano keyboard can be good. So A flat minor, this is A flat, and so just knowing that where the whole steps and half steps are and skipping over a key to get a whole step. Here I'm skipping the white key. To get another whole step from B flat, I'm skipping over this white key and going to the next white key. Then I want a half step to the next black key, skipping over a white key for a whole step, skipping over a white key for a whole step, and so on. So F, G flat, and A flat gives me the minor scale, I believe, if I'm not having a memory lapse. But anyway, that process can really help you. That's the main point. Yeah. What is next?
Well, we definitely want to concentrate on assignment 20. That is the assignment that is directly tied to the core competency exam, and it's probably the hardest one in the unit. So, anyone want to take a stab at it?
I'm happy to. Nobody else is dying to.
We can tag team. If you want to look at the
Yeah, I can do the first page. You can do the second page.
Sure, I'll get the second page started.
Okay. All right. Oh, relative major and minor is tricky. So this is page 1 of homework number 20. Relative and parallel scales. This is it's one of my favorite topics to explain because I like to think of relative major and minor keys as literally relatives, like family, in the sense that they share the same DNA, meaning literally the same pitch content, but they have different personalities because they start in different places within that content. What I mean by that is that a relative and major and minor scale pair, like for example A minor and C major, are literally the same 7 notes. You can do both using a single set of 7 pitches. So with A minor and C major, it's the white keys on the piano. And the only difference is where you start within that set of 7 pitches. So with A minor, you start on A. With C major, you start on C, and you're going to get a minor and major scale. And really the best way to really learn this, I would say, is to go to a piano if you can find one and just sort of fiddle around with the white keys and see if you start on A and play all the way up to the next A, it's going to sound minor. If you start on C and play to the next C, it's going to sound major, and that's really all it comes down to. The trick is to be able to do this on command and find the relationship. And the way I think of that is 3 semitones apart. And people do it this different ways, but basically if you're starting from minor, the tonic of the relative major is 3 semitones above the tonic of the minor. So again, A minor, go up to B flat, up to B natural, and then up to C. That's 3 semitones, and you get to the relative major. Going down the other direction, you get the other way. So let's do this first question. The key signatures that is the relative minor of B major. Basically, you're going. Okay, this brings in an additional thing, which is that the key signatures, because all of the pitches are the same between the relative minor and relative major, the key signature is identical because that's the thing that gives you what notes you're using. So if you're solid on key signatures, you can do this fairly easily just by saying if the relative minor of B major has the same key signature as B major, so what key signature does B major have? And then you just go down the choices and you pick the one that is B major, and that happens to be the 5 sharp option.
If I could just point out one thing in there. There is always going to be contradictions with the key if you make the wrong choice. So for instance, in this example we're looking at right here, where we're looking for the relative of B, instantly you should be able to eliminate every single flat key that's up there, because every single flat key has a B flat in it, and nothing that is related to B major can have a B flat. So when you're looking at these examples, just keep in mind that you cannot contradict the note of the name. So if it says E flat major or E flat minor, then the corresponding major key has to have an E flat in it, which completely eliminates the possibility of using any of the sharp keys. So in this example, 1, 3, 5, 7, none of those are going to be possible. Nor would any key that has a B sharp in it. Not that there are many keys, but the very last one also wouldn't be possible because that has a B sharp. That's a contradiction, would not be allowed.
Yeah. And then probably the one with no sharps or flats is unlikely, but double check it just in case. But yeah, you're generally going to be in a realm of sharps or in a realm of flats. So for relative majors, relative major and minor, stay in that realm. It's also useful. I'm sort of giving you a shortcut in this case, but you do need to be able to identify the tonic of the relative minor, and that's what I was talking about, the 3 semitones up or down. So just remember, if you're starting from major, going to its relative minor, you go down from the tonic. If you're starting from the minor and going up to its relative major, you go up 3 semitones. So in this case, the tonic would be G sharp minor, which shares a key signature with B major, and that's going to be the 5 sharp option. So that's a one example. Just to avoid taking too long, let's maybe move on from there. And of course, ask us questions if you have concerns about that page. You want to take over for page 2?
I think Craig's muted.
Craig, we can't hear you.
Unmute your craziness.
That is a shame, because I just said some of the most brilliant theory instruction that the world has ever heard.
We knew it. We knew it. You're cheating us.
That was it. I don't know if I can recreate it, but let me try. So the biggest problem people are going to have with this particular assignment is that they are not going to remember tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, leading tone, or subtonic in there. And so you need to make sure that you have an individualized way of remembering what those scale degrees refer to. For me, I always remember that tonic is 1 and dominant is 5. And of course the mediant is in the middle and splits the difference, which is 3. 5 below the tonic is the subdominant. So 5 above the tonic is the dominant, 5 below is the subdominant. And the submediant splits apart the tonic and the subdominant. So that's 6, halfway in between 4 and 1. That's a sentence I never thought I would utter. 6 is between 4 and 1. And then, of course, the leading tone is 1 below, and the supertonic, which is, of course, the most heroic of all of the scale degrees, is 1 above. I imagine if I was more clever, I'd come up with a mnemonic device to remember tonic, supertonic, mediant, and so on, but I'm not. In any case, so then the challenge is just correctly identifying the tonic note and then finding the scale degree and applying the scale degree correctly. So if I jump down here to number 3, just for example, based on the major key signature, what is the harmonic function of the given note? So the major key signature with 2 flats is B flat major. A quick way to remember that is whenever you have flats, the second to last flat is the name of the key, so in this case B flat major. Now if I start on B flat, C is the second scale degree. Remember that the B flat always counts as 1, so that would be a supertonic. If I jump down here to the 3 flats, this is E flat major, and if I happen to have forgotten that, then I can remember that the second to last flat is the name of my key. I have 3 flats, E flat, second to last flat. If I start in E flat and count up, I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, and the answer to this one would then be the submediant. So if I go to page 3, this is going to get a little trickier because we have to discern subtonic and leading tone. We talked about this a little bit in the last one. The leading tone is going to be the half step, the raised 7th scale degree, while the subtonic is going to be the unaltered one. So let's see. I'm trying to find an example, and I'm striking out of a leading tone. And I don't think I got a single one, did I?
2 speeding motorists slowed down seeing lights.
What?
Nice.
That's a mnemonic.
Let me.
2 speeding motorists slowed down seeing lights.
I like it. Funny story, actually, it took me years to be able to say the word mnemonic, and occasionally I can't say it. But in any case, so minor key signature. So first we have to figure out what the minor key signature I'm looking at number 2 is. It has 2 sharps. I remember that the major key signature of 2 sharps is D major. And if I forgot that, I can always remember the trick of the last sharp is the leading tone. So if my last sharp is C sharp, then my tonic is D. If I know that the tonic is D, and I remember the trick of going down 3 half steps, then I will remember that B minor is the relative minor to D major. So B minor is my tonic. And that's really important to get. It took a few steps, but if you count this up from D major by accident, you'll get supertonic. In any case, we're in B minor. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. E would be the 4th scale degree, which is subdominant in both major and in minor. For this particular one, we have 1 sharp. We know that that's G major. If we have G major, the relative minor would be E minor, which is that down 3 half steps. It's also down 1 line within the key. It would be down a space if we'd started on the space. And E and the key of E is the 1st scale degree, making that particular one the tonic. So unfortunately I didn't have a leading tone where I could show you, but those would be the ones that are difficult to do.
I just realized that I never said anything about the parallel minor. And I think it's worth just a word about that. Basically, parallel minor, the way it's, if you can just remember this simple rule, I think it gets you most of the way. It's a major and minor key that share the same tonic note. So in relative major and minor, they have the same set of pitches but different tonic notes. Parallel minor means that they start on the same pitch and then they have different pitches that make up major and minor. So C major becomes C minor when you add an E flat and an A flat and a B flat. So just make sure that that distinction is clear in your minds. That was a brief, very brief version, but just wanted to make sure that that had been included. I'm trying to see if there's any. Yeah, so actually, let me just do a quick reshare to jump back to that. Just found an example. Number 7 here says, select the key signature that is the parallel minor of E flat minor. And in one sense, this is tricky because you can't just pick the same key signature that you know from the given key. But another way, it's simpler because you know what the tonic is, and if you know your key signatures, you pick the key signature that matches the major version of that tonic. So it says parallel major of E flat minor. You know that because so this is where you need to know. Parallel means same tonic pitch. That means you're looking for any key signature that has E flat as a tonic and then also is major. So then you just have to know your key signatures. So go down the list. This is major, F major. As Craig said before, if you're dealing with a flat key, chances are it's not going to be a sharp key, so you can usually avoid that. But double check them. So this is G major, B flat major, D major, E flat major. Bing, bing, bing. This is it. So it's a different process than before, where we were doing the relative minor. But if you know that distinction, and read carefully, don't skip over. It's a very small word, parallel versus relative, but it has huge implications for what the answer is.
And I just want to mention one thing. I'm full of tips and tricks on how to figure things out and find key signatures and whatnot. But at the end of it, the best things you can do for yourself is just to memorize the numbers of sharps and flats in every key. There's not that many. There really isn't. Make flashcards. It will really help you to be to the point where you can just say, oh, A major, 3 sharps. It's really worth taking your time to do. So, we'll continue to show tips and tricks and, circle of fifths and all those fun things to figure it out. But at the end of the day, one of the best things you can do for yourself is commit yourself to memorizing these, at most 24 to 28 key signatures if you count enharmonic key signatures. It's really not that many, and it will really benefit you for the rest of the course to be able to just go, okay, F minor, 4 flats, end of story.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, our education system doesn't do a lot with like bare just rote memorization anymore, but there are cases where it's so powerful, and this is one of them. And as Craig said, there aren't that many, so it's certainly doable for many people. Should we push ahead to? Do we need to do any other homeworks, or should we push ahead and talk about the exam? Have we lost Stephen?
The exam? I think maybe push ahead to the exam.
I just couldn't figure out how to unmute.
No.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I just want to make clear about the exam, we have a lot of questions about people wanting to go back and try old homework assignments without it changing their grade and things like that. I would encourage you not to worry about that. In the exam folder itself, there is a practice exam, and this practice exam is literally identical to the real exam in that all the question pools that generate the questions for the real exam are the same pools that are generating the questions for the practice exam. In fact, for all of these questions, there's every conceivable possible option. There's lots and lots of questions. So you can take the practice exam over and over and over again, and you'll get a sense of how well you know those types of questions. And then when you step into the exam, you'll be ready. You'll know exactly what to expect on each page of the exam, but you probably won't have seen all the answers. That's not really possible. But that being said, that's what we'd encourage you to do. Spend some time in that practice exam. The exam is worth a considerable stead for the rest of the course.
And this underlines a general element of this course, which is that we give you the tools to do well. Like, it is in every single one of you have the power to do very well in the course if you put in the kind of grunt work, so to speak. In other words, we give you so much opportunity for practice and to go over things and to see everything in context, and this is a case of that. I mean, you can literally kind of take the exam before you take the exam. So don't miss out on that opportunity if you're feeling at all, shaky on any of these things. And it's coming up soon, so we probably won't talk to you before then because it's before Unit 4 is due, I believe. And
actually, it's not. It's not. We give them a very specific window, and I think it's at the end of Unit 4. So it opens on April 9th and closes on the 12th. So there's a very narrow window. One of the nice things about having a narrow window is that the proctor track people are going to be issue to assist you. But you really have to complete it within that 4-day period. But that'll give you lots of time to prepare for it. So don't panic. There's still a couple weeks before you have to do that to really give that practice exam a real solid going over before, and ask questions. That's why we're here. So if we get a lot of requests to go over stuff online, to do another session, maybe we can do one in a week and a half or 2 weeks as we get closer.
And as you can see, we picked this unit partly because the unit itself is short, not that much homework, and there's no creative project, so the workload is
nothing
not,
else is
like,
going
doubling.
on.
Yeah. So we're kind and thoughtful people, and we care about you. So anything else? We're running up on an hour here, so.
I think we've stopped being entertaining a long time ago, and for the one dedicated viewer who we have left, we thank you. Oh no, he's gone. No, we have 0 viewers now.
Oh, they'll be back.
They'll be back. Those darn kids will watch us eventually.
They will.
In my day, we didn't have computers to do music stuff.
We'll be famous on YouTube.
I think we'd have to be a lot more interesting. Yeah. The theory nerds.
Yep.
Ooh, I got this new book, Behind Bars.
Yeah.
It sounds like we're gonna have one of those like MSNBC shows where we go inside prisons. No. We teach music theory to prisoners with the Behind Bars book. Okay,
It's
we're
a clever name.
It is a clever name. It's very.
All right, shall we say goodnight to our dear students?
Yeah.
Our dear students.
Good night, all. Or good morning in my case. As always, it's a pleasure.